Hello and welcome to another episode of Phrasally Verbocious. My name is Alan and I am joined by Chris.
Good afternoon.
And today, Chris and myself are going to be talking about sweating the small stuff and what little things make a big difference in teaching. So, Chris, if you're sweating the small stuff, what small stuff do you sweat?
Asking students how they are and actually listening to the answers.
Oh, that's a really good one. That's a really obvious one too, isn't it?
It's a really obvious one, and it's a really easy one not to follow.
Yeah.
Because you've all the students, they're asking them how they are. We've talked before about how you and I both discourage the I'm fine.
I'm fine, thanks, and you?
Yeah. So, and then you start to get the real emotions coming through from the students as they get used to your way of actually asking them and caring, and then actually remembering the stuff that they tell you. Maybe they're not great because their football team lost, or maybe they're great because their football team won, or something. And then the next lesson, maybe there's a reference to it. I mean, not reminding them that the team lost, but
yeah. Well, sometimes. I actually had a student a good few years ago now, 12-year-old, who would come in, and for a joke one time, she thought it would be funny to tell me her cat died or something when
oh my goodness.
Her sister tapped me on the shoulder and says, "We don't have a cat. She's just looking sympathy," which was kind of funny because it then turned into this year-long running joke of every time she came in, she told me another animal had died, and she was obviously going out there and picking out the really weird animals that you don't necessarily get in Extremadura. And,
do tell what extravagant and exotic pets did she manage to lose that year?
We descended into dragons, into unicorns, into space goblins.
Not so much that they didn't happen in Extremadura, but just generally don't exist.
Yeah, one of that. Yeah. But it was a cool way of starting the class. But you were talking about how you asking how students are. I think. Entering the classroom is actually one of the most important things you do because you're setting the scene for the next 90 minutes of your life and their lives as well. And it sets a tone for the entire class. So if you come across like a human as opposed to a textbook and chalk and blackboard thing that's telling them things in English, it's a lot easier to, one, get them on your side, and two,
definitely.
It's the empathy in the classroom again that we've come back to.
Yeah.
It's a language class, we're not be prepared to come in here and get things wrong because that's good.
Yeah, I think so. Just setting the tone. Adults particularly, like especially if you've got space at the beginning of the class to, ask them how they are, but actually have like genuine conversations with them.
Yeah. I think one of the fun things with my adult classes last year was it just so happened, I know we've had it where we've worked together, but I always had a 30-minute window between my last kids class and my adult classes that started at 8:30. So it was quite good because you would get like the early ones that would come in, but it was always different because everybody was working or there was football or there was, something was going on. So actually having the crack, to use the Irish term, nothing to do with police, the Irish word, is actually really good for just speaking to them like human beings, and they're having a bit of crack in English as well, which sets a tone for a class. But I think if you have a teacher like that, that's, you see the human side or they tell you stories and stuff, you're more likely to work for them,
Yeah, I think so. And I think that links in to valuing them. And showing that value. And one of the things that I would say that I spend a lot of time on and referenced recently in the ELT Ireland summer event, the little projects that I do with little people, and making sure that there's a point every couple of weeks really where we bring together stuff that we've been doing and they make something that goes on the wall, and actually make a point of putting it on the wall during the lesson. So maybe they're playing a game and I can get one of the students to run the game in a sense. And maybe they're doing hangman and one of the kids can come to the board and do it or whatever it might be. So they can see me actually putting them up. they can see their work going up on the wall at that moment, and it's just showing
Yeah.
that I'm valuing them, their work. It's becoming part of the classroom environment.
Yeah, it becomes a part of the class itself.
Yeah,
That's a
I
pretty
think
good
so.
idea. Yeah, I do like. I used to have last year. Again, the kids got to the academy earlier than what the class started, so everybody was coming in with like drawings and stuff, and they went
Oh,
straight on the wall. So we created
yeah,
this like year-long collage of literally everything you could draw.
just like a mini gallery of stuff that
Yeah. It
they
was
produced.
kind of. I weirdly enough, I take that stuff home. I have 7 years worth of kids
Oh,
artwork in my cupboard right now in Ireland from Spain. It's kind of nice. Yeah.
you're so sweet.
No one has ever said that before.
Well, I hadn't realized before.
Apart from that time, I fell in a bucket of honey. But sure, never mind. Just to end the topic on starting classes. I think one of the most fun things to notice rather than do, one of the most fun things to notice is how your teenagers walk into class.
Oh, yes.
Body language. The body language from teenagers can be
Well, it says it all.
hilarious. Yeah. So sometimes you got to get them out of the slump, and sometimes they're bouncing off the walls. Some of them are really confident. Some of them can't make eye contact. It's just all about whatever manner they walk into your class. You gotta get them on your side, and react to how they come to you.
I think that's the unspoken version of asking them how they are and listening to the answers, isn't it? Like, reading the room, seeing what's going on, and having enough confidence in yourself and in your group to kind of go with it a little bit. Like you can see if they're really not in the mood for a sentence transformation. I mean, no one apart from me ever is, but there are those days when they're more up for it than others.
Yeah.
And if they're really not up for it, change it to a speaking activity, get them to do a discussion, and save the grammar for the next lesson. Doesn't do any harm.
I think the idea of reading the room at all points in the classroom, it's what's made online teaching so hard, because sometimes you can't. I mean, language is body language as well.
It's very difficult. Yeah.
But yeah, I think in person reading the room, I mean, we've all had those classes where it's like, do you know what? They're just not up to doing, say you're doing the perfect tense or something, and they're just not going there. It's like, all right, do you know what we're going to do? We're going to have a class debate. I want you guys to say this, you guys to do this. And then, I always have fallback theater books or something to bring in.
Well, I was going to say, isn't that in a sense, that's another of the small things that I sweat. I make sure that I've got things in reserve in my head that I don't need to do, that are not necessary, but will fill gaps. But also, if what I'm doing just is falling flat, well, we can go a different direction.
I think every teacher has those fallback activities in your brain, because the way you're gauging. Okay, here's your brain has a compartment for 15-minute activities, for more active activities, for calming activities, for young learners, older learners, adults. I think it's everybody has that sort of their own fallback, which is always good. I like to do silly debates. I like to do theater, and with the young learners, they love River. I don't know what it is with Spanish kids in the game River, but it's the go-to game.
I have had students asking, when I've asked them at the end of online lessons what game they want to play, and they have brought that one up, and I have to say, I can't really do it with you all in your separate houses.
Yeah, it's a shame, especially because I don't even have much room around me right now.
It's a game for the benefit of listeners. It's a game where the students line up. They choose a topic. So it might be food, and if the word that you then say is from the topic, they step across the river, and if it's not, then they don't cross the river. Basically,
there's loads of different versions. So my 10-year-olds last year, they controlled the game. So they were down the middle of the room, where so happened to be the middle of the board as well, which was good. On one side of the river, there was different types of vocabulary. On the other side, there was different types of vocabulary.
Yeah, that works as well.
Yeah, it's the harder version, basically. They got to pick the vocabulary. But sometimes it worked out really funny because sometimes I would just draw a line down the board. They knew what was coming, so they were like, "Oh, yeah, we're pen river," and then they got to pick what the words were. One of the funniest ones was before I didn't draw. I stopped drawing the line because it was too. There was that noticing.
Too much anticipation.
Yeah. There was even though it only takes 0.5 of a second to draw a line down a board. So I remember we were doing something. We clear the room, books away, and everybody's quiet. And then I went, Carmen, give me a word. And she goes, So I wrote on the board and then turned to the other table. Sergio, give me a word. And then I put on the board. So then they get into the idea of going, okay, we're doing silly noises today. But it was just a nice change from having sport, food, clothing, geography, cities, or whatever down the board. So you can. It's the most gradable standing game there is in ELT, I think.
Given instructions.
Yeah, giving instructions is something I've started to notice myself. I started to notice this last year, whereas if you change the wording of certain things, instructions can come across completely differently. Everybody has their own, the way you're always taught when you're doing teacher training, the ICQ, CCQ, and all that fluff. But I think everybody, after a while, has their own sort of method of checking and making sure what classes do. Sometimes for bigger groups, it's getting, two different people to explain what their groups are doing. I do team captains, and they're the sort of captain or police, some of them like to call it, telling me. I just think it's interesting when you change certain words as well. When you're given it, say you're doing a couple of exercises from the book because you're doing something quite complicated, so you're going through answers and stuff. Don't use the word exercise. Try breaking it up into parts and not exercise. Say you've 3 exercises to do. Start calling them part 1, 2, and 3 as opposed to exercise 1, 2, and 3. I genuinely find a different reaction to using it as parts, because then it was more, or even part 2 of 3. So then they'll go, okay, we're going to stop here and we're going to do something else. I find that was quite interesting, the way people reacted more positively to doing, say you were doing a difficult grammar point in B2.
Yeah.
They found it a lot more easier to manage if you had, say, parts 1 of 3. As opposed to, right, lads, do you mean
if you're in the course book, you've got one exercises 1, 2, and 3, but rather than saying let's do exercise 1, you're saying let's do part 1.
Part 1 of 3. Yeah, part 1 of 3. So they know there's a limit.
Also where it's finishing.
Yeah. So they know there's a start and end point of what's happening in the class. It's kind of like, the way some people write their lesson plans on the board for all to see.
Yeah.
Do you do that often? Do you write your lesson plan on the board? No, I don't think it is. No. Because sometimes, I've had, the way when you get like those dogma moments where you have parts where it's like, I'm going to completely change this lesson. So then the lesson plan's out the window, but in a positive sort of constructive way.
In a positive way. I don't like my students. Maybe not all of them, but no, those who are thinking about it. My students know my lessons are planned, but I don't want them thinking that they're so planned that we're in a box. I want them to feel the same freedom that I want to feel in my lessons as well. So I think I get why people do it, but it's not something that doesn't fit my style. Having mentioned the whiteboard, though, there's something about the whiteboard I want to say in this pod, which is that I've become very consistent with my whiteboard use, which I know is something that is trained up. But it's something that I have not historically been very good at doing. And this year I actually I printed off and laminated like signs for my whiteboard. And I have a section where it's always that section we have error correction. That section is always vocabulary, new vocabulary from the lesson.
Yeah.
So that there's a consistency on the whiteboard when they look at it. They know where they're going to look to find the vocabulary. They can see that the errors go up during the lesson. I don't write them up as they're speaking, but like they'll appear there during the so it's all there. Everything's in the same place every time. I think that's really useful.
Yeah, I've always done it. the student's left-hand side or the left-hand side of the room, because I'm a lefty, so I would be writing it that way. It's easiest for me, right? That's where the vocab goes. And then this sort of central area of the board is the main class points and whatever I need there. And then error correction towards the right, if that makes sense. It would be the student's right if you're looking at it. Yeah.
But then, as you say, that's what works for you as a left hand. I don't think it matters where on the board, as long as it's always in the same place.
Yeah.
So that the students get used to, that's where the new vocabulary is going to go.
Mm-hmm. Well, what about if a lot of people are in groups and everybody's talking? How do you get silence in the room? I'll not say silence in the room. Regain control of the room, or everybody's attention on you.
I don't know. I never lose control of the room.
Because so many teachers have so many different ways of bringing attention back to themselves. It's funny when you go to conferences and then people try it out on other adults, and you're sitting there going, "I'm not 3."
Well, I was going to say it does depend on the age of the group. If I'm talking about kids, then I'm probably going to do some sort of countdown.
Yeah.
But I like to have, as you know, I like to have high expectations. So as soon as I can get away with just saying thank you.
Oh yeah, because I would
something like that.
Yeah. Sometimes I just start a sentence, but the first 3 words just so happen to be very loud. Sorry, I'll rephrase that. They so happen to be louder than the other words because I'm generally a loud person. Or just the word okay, just very, very loud.
Yeah. Thank you. Okay.
Yeah.
Right.
But as long as it's done in a manner that nobody's offended in any way.
I mean, especially with Cambridge groups, I like to use the thank you because it prepares them for the thank yous in the oral exam.
I always tell them thank you if a British person as an Irish person, if a British person tells you thank you, that's just a polite way of being told to shut up. It relaxes them a lot more.
Yeah, exactly. Well, exactly.
What's your young learners technique then for getting attention back on you?
Countdown.
Okay. So I do a thing thumbs on table where everybody has to put both thumbs up on the table as 2 fists, because it means they're not holding anything in their hands.
Yeah.
2, it means I know they're listening, and 3, they're quiet. I got that from a Scottish teacher we used to work with, who had really good sudden silence in the room techniques, and I thought that was the best because your hands are empty.
I like that.
Your thumbs up, and you're looking at the teacher at all times.
But how do you get them to that point?
Sorry?
But how do you get them to put their thumbs on the table? What's the thing that gets their attention back?
You literally shout thumbs on table.
Oh, I see. Right. Okay.
So as soon as if everybody's in a group work, I shout thumbs on table. Everybody sits down, fists on the table, thumbs up, and everybody's looking at me with their mouth closed.
Yeah.
Works a trait. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, I like that. I like that a lot. I guess it's kind of related. Difficult students.
Difficult students. Yeah. Everybody. I'm one of those people that maybe it's because of the history of where I'm from. Maybe it's because I'm 190 centimeters, used to be a rugby player, and have a Derry accent. I get handed the difficult students.
I can relate. I mean, I don't have the same credentials demographically as you do, but I often find myself in a similar situation.
Yeah, which I don't know why, but I remember I can name 3 of them. I'm not going to. I can name three of them from last year, and they were not in any way difficult to me. No, I do think that students react differently to different teacher personalities,
and that's it.
Yeah, and there's no 2 ways about it. I remember when we worked together, I was given, were they a previous class of yours, all boys, young teenagers? Oh, yes. And they became my favorite class of the year. But you would think on paper, oh boy, teens class, this isn't good. But once you get them on your side, you'd be surprised just how much fun and crack you can have with them.
There's a certain amount of getting on side that does a lot of that. So the things we've been talking about, the little things that make them feel valued, is going to be a huge help. Yeah. But there is always going to be that situation that some students there just isn't the click. And I think one of the I don't think I hear this talked about enough. I mean, because there is the element of being professionals, and we need to teach whomever is in the room. But I think there comes also a point where we have to remember that we're all humans,
Mm-hmm.
and there are no robots involved in this, and there might just not be a click. And I'm going to teach whoever's in the room, and I'm going to treat everyone in the room with respect. I'm going to treat them all as humans who can achieve their potential. But if they don't like me, or if they don't click with me from their side,
Mm-hmm.
or they don't click with my colleague next door, then it might be that a switch of a group is going to be helpful for them.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think that gets talked about enough.
Yeah, I mean, human beings by nature have 50,000 years of not getting along with each other,
Yeah.
and that's okay. But I think it's one of those life lessons, really, that sometimes you got to understand, no matter what you do in life or where you go, somebody is just not gonna like you.
Yeah. Yeah.
And if you take that too personally as a teacher, you might have a bit of a problem, because sometimes you just naturally just don't click with others. But in terms of having difficult students, I think the one thing that how I've got them on my side is, even though, yeah, there might be, 8, 12, 15, 25, whatever, talk to them. It sounds like a really strange and stupid thing to say in a language classroom, but if you just if you talk to them, find out what clicks with them, and then see where they're coming from. Everybody's carrying their own cross. Nobody's, there's a human you're looking at, but you don't know what's going on behind those eyes. Treat them like an adult, give them an opinion, ask them what they're doing at the weekend, take a genuine interest. This is where my student cheat sheets come into it, where I keep like a little hidden document of, the names of their brothers, their sisters, their dog, where they went on holiday last, what they want to do, stuff like that.
I mean, this is an old trick from business, isn't it? With salespeople keeping, Rolodex cards, all that information, so that when they meet that person, or diplomats, when they meet that person again at a conference, then how's this, that, how's the other thing? They're people with, as you say, something behind the eyes, and that makes me think of a concept or a topic we come back to repeatedly, which is L1, and there's obviously a huge difference between using and speaking L1, but I think just occasionally speaking the students L1 to them gives them that moment of, oh, I've got two Brazilian kids in one of my junior groups at the moment, and they know I'm learning Portuguese, but they every now and again and I'm going to pronounce it terribly because my pronunciation in Portuguese is awful, but let's say muito bem, very good in Portuguese, or an obrigado. The joy on their faces, or if I greet them with boa tarde, they have this grin that goes beyond their ears. But it'll only be two words in an hour, but it's like, yeah, I've noticed that you're not Spanish. And I can do the hello, I can do the well done, I can do the thank you, so I will drop them in now and again, and God, the joy. Or occasionally asking them how to say something. So I mean, it's the end of the term, so I was doing a bit of a bilingual thank you and stuff to my students online this week, and with that particular group, also I did my sort of, again, but it was bilingual, so I wanted to make the students feel valued, and I was just like, and to the two kids, I was like, and how do I say this in Portuguese? And so they told me, so I said boas férias to them, and again, that joy, that moment of, oh yeah, no, he's really valuing us, and noticing that we're a bit different in that way.
Yeah.
And like when I work as academic manager at summer schools, multilingual summer schools, sorry, they've got all these kids and from different countries, and obviously I don't speak all of their languages, but sometimes, and amongst the staff, we've got a variety of sort of major languages. I've got an upset student who happens to come from Spain or Latin America. Brilliant, because that little touch of L1. You ask them what's happened, even if they tell you in English, which doesn't always happen, but does sometimes. But just asking them what's happened in Spanish can really calm them down.
Yeah, It's just the personalization and the noticing of the noticing.
I mean, where we worked together, we had a director of studies who would always say, "Speak in English, whisper in Spanish."
Mm-hmm.
Like there wasn't a ban on Spanish; it was just that we're speaking in English. That's the language we're here to use. But we might need to whisper. We might need to communicate a quick message.
Yeah,
and that's fine.
Especially for the lower levels where they don't actually know how to get across, an issue they may have in English. If they don't have it, I mean, the frustration you might get in a young learner, like if someone doesn't know they need to go to the bathroom because they're not making it incredibly obvious, then they're going to be quite uncomfortable. Yeah,
and then of course they're not going to learn.
Yeah,
and then of course they might actually become quite challenging in that lesson, or over time because they don't feel like they can communicate very well,
or even hold a grudge.
Yeah, absolutely. So I do think that's important. I suppose I know that you've got a point about cultural awareness, and I think that kind of feeds in here. But especially with that multilingual summer school that I work at, the being aware that that they might interact in ways that you don't expect. Do you have some thoughts on that?
Yeah, well, we're going to go on to the cultural awareness things. So both of us have mainly worked in the Spanish-speaking world. I've worked with a lot of Arabic students, L1, classical Arabic students as well. And so we've both done the Cambridge Examiner training. And I remember it was quite interesting this year when there was we sort of got a bit of a course before you do the course thing. Where we had another examiner in and we were doing a thing on different cultures coming in to do the same exam. So we had done, I could do PET, FCE, C, advanced or proficiency in my sleep. I know the exam's inside out. But when it comes to watching videos of students whose L1 isn't Spanish or Arabic, it's a very different world. So it was quite interesting where we did videos on, there was a group of Russians and we did videos on them doing the FCE, which is quite interesting because your initial reaction is they're not smiling, they're not very interested, and they're sort of plodding through the exam. But then you get past that after about the first 2 minutes, you go, oh, hang on, he's actually using this grammar point. He's actually doing this. This is actually quite a high scoring B2 exam.
I've seen that video. I know exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah, because it's the cultural difference from the outgoing Mediterranean Spanish to a culture that in public, not generally accepted, you should be smiling to other people because you're seen as an idiot. That's just the cultural difference between the two.
Yeah.
And then there was a really funny one we did. It was a teenage advanced class we were doing. And there were teenage advanced class that were all French doing the advanced exam. And it was quite funny because the guy taking the examiner course was like, I know what every one of you in this room are going to mark these guys before it even starts.
Okay.
And it was quite funny because there were, 16, 17-year-olds, the guys in the exam, that is, that had quite a bit of charm. They were really well dressed. Generally speaking, the women in the room scored him much higher than the men in the room. And he was the ones in the video were actually a lot weaker than what people were scoring them. He did pass the exam in the video. I'm sure it's on YouTube anyway. But I just think it's quite funny the way being so used to Spanish culture and then marking Russians and then marking French, even France is right beside Spain, but the tiny differences can actually be quite big when you're in. And because of what your L1 is, you're going to interpret that differently from what they mean as well. Right. A smile in our language is, outgoing and friendly, whereas it's seen as idiotic in other languages. Style may be covering up for, a lower level. And the examiner was quite funny because he was like, every time I do this video, women in the room score this much higher than the men in the room. So he's obviously noticed a pattern when taking this
Yeah,
examiner course.
that's fascinating. And how does that translate to the classroom then? I suppose it's
I suppose because it's how we interpret certain things aren't. Especially, I've seen a really good article. Who was it? Was it Scrivener? I can't remember. Did a really good article on using sarcasm and humor. So laughter is completely universal. Everybody laughs around the world, but humor is very subjective.
incredibly culturally specific.
Exactly, yeah. So what you say to someone in an L2 classroom might be funny to you. They might laugh back, but they might not actually be finding it funny.
Yeah.
Because I mean, even different areas of, the English speaking world, laughter and humor are very, very different things.
Very different things.
So I just think it's something to always be aware of.
Yeah, and just I suppose again that cultural awareness and sort of opening your mind and being aware, and then also if you're busy reading the room, if you're busy reading the gestures, the body language of the students, we're all realizing that doesn't necessarily mean what you think it means.
Yeah,
and that again, like I say, it's worth learning. It's a good thing to learn the local language if you're teaching monolingual groups somewhere. And it's also therefore worth learning about the culture so you can understand what they're doing. And if you're teaching multilingual groups, and that's reality for, I'm sure, some of our listeners, and it certainly is for me at times, then that's something you have to manage as well.
Mm-hmm. I mean, it's not a case of being overly aware and taking parsnips too seriously or something. It's just the subtle differences of what one culture might find not even appropriateness. It's more on the surface of that,
right, but that's why I was linking to it from the touches of L1, because I think having that on the surface is like saying we dubbing, and or something to a Portuguese speaker. Oh, he noticed. Oh, he knows.
Yeah,
and that's enough. It's not. It's letting the student know that they're valued, and then that all feeds into the whole atmosphere. That feeds into the keeping them on side and helping them make progress, I think.
Yeah. It's one of those very interesting things to read up on as well, because of how different cultures view stuff like that. It's just a very interesting thing that we need to be aware of it. It's not the be all and end all, but it's just something to be very careful about. Even the likes of, like in the Islamic Center or whatever, the likes of hand gestures and stuff. Just something to be familiarize yourself with in different languages as well.
I observed a fantastic lesson two summers ago. At my summer school. Very experienced teacher, and she was doing a lesson. So the first three lessons of our timetable were very much to do with grammar, and then the fourth lesson was to do with some sort of. So the first two were grammar. The third lesson was something using authentic material. So listening or reading, TV, whatever. And this teacher had taken something about a video from YouTube about gesture in English, in Britain, sorry. And then turned the lesson into mini presentations from the students who picked something typical in terms of gesture from where they came from.
Right.
And demonstrated and explained it. And it was fascinating because actually it was a wonderful one to watch, because she kind of just sat back and the students did everything. Asked each other questions. Oh, because where we come from, that means this. And so we literally, in that room, everybody learned something in that lesson. Yeah. It may not have been target language, but they learned something about someone else's culture. Yeah. Or they learned that when they do this, it means this. I mean, I'm forever telling my Spanish students to turn their two fingers around when they tell me the answer is two.
I know, I'm never going to get used to that.
No, I've been here 4 years, and every time somebody holds up two fingers to me to tell me two, I have to remind myself that they're not being rude. So for any listeners who are unaware, in some parts of the English-speaking world, the two-fingered salute, as it's referred to, is equivalent to sticking up your middle finger on its own. And where I come from is one of those places. So even though I know my Spanish students are just saying the number two and not being rude, it still jars every time I see them.
Yeah, every time. You never get used to it. It's quite funny.
No.
Yeah.
And what's worse is that because I'm becoming more and more españolizado, I find myself doing it.
Yeah.
And then turning my fingers around in embarrassment and then realizing that no one cared. Yeah, that's a thing. But that's the kind of thing I mean, you know. And if you had a situation where somebody found a gesture offensive, and to somebody else it was just the way of showing the number 3, then in that multilingual environment, or even if a multilingual environment, and you're the teacher that doesn't realize that gesture just means something else, like then there's room for conflict.
Yeah.
And I think being aware and open to that is one of the small things that are worth being aware of.
So we've gone through the entire lesson and what could go on in the lesson. So we started on starting a lesson. So let's end on ending a lesson.
That sounds very eminently sensible, Alan.
It almost sounds like we planned this. So what little things do you like to do when you end a lesson? For example, since young learners don't get a lot of homework, the lesson before the weekend, I used to, before everybody left the room, I used to ask them all as a class, right, everybody, what's your homework? And then everybody would smile at me and utter the words, have a nice weekend. It used to take them so long to get that, because at the start of September, they were all like, okay, everybody sit down, you're going to write down your homework. And they're like, oh, we get homework in this class? And then you start writing on the board and you're like, he's writing exercise numbers. And then you've actually just written the words, have a nice weekend, with a smile. And then everybody gets a high five when they leave the building, which then gets personalized throughout the year. I stole that idea from a video of a teacher doing it I think it's in the States.
Because there's a video of somebody who I think is teaching, I think it's in Palestine, and she has a board by her door with options for greetings. And as the students come in, they touch the greeting that they want, and then they get the greeting.
Oh, that's cool.
It can be a hug, it can be a handshake, it can be a high five, or it could, I can't remember what the other one was. A fist bump.
Oh, nice. That's pretty cool.
And yeah, and so as you see, it's a beautiful video, because as they come in, they all get the greeting that they feel comfortable with. And some of them want to give their teacher a big hug, and some of them want a fist bump, and some of them do choose the handshake. It's really cute.
It's quite formal.
Yeah, but if that's what that student feels comfortable doing, then
that's perfectly fine. Yeah,
absolutely. And you're starting from that point. And who's to say that the next lesson the student doesn't come in and point to the hug?
Yeah.
Because they need a hug that day.
It's also perfectly fine that they point to one that says, nothing, leave me alone.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, of
Fair
course.
play to them. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I like those. Go on.
I was going to say higher levels. I like them to leave giving me a new sentence of grammar they've just looked at that day. So they know that whatever it will be that I'll ask for, if they've noticed or not, it's going to be on the board anyway. So they only have to turn 90 degrees before they're allowed to leave the room. Other students I got, other younger ones, they only get to leave the room once they give me a valid reason as to why they are awesome.
Yeah.
So you get sentences, I'm awesome because blah, 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 blah. And it's like, yeah, of course you can leave. Or if they repeat an answer, you go, no, try again.
Yeah. I'll do some sort of things with maybe like an oral exit ticket. So that it, likewise, give me an item of vocab from the lesson, or I might not even be from the lesson. Maybe it's a revision moment. And I'm like, okay, give me a fruit. Okay, you can go. Give me a sport. Okay, you can go. No, she already said that one. Back of the line. Or I quite like reasons that they should be allowed to go.
Oh, that's good. I think
that's for older ones, of course.
Yeah, because I have a swimming lesson. It's like, okay, I can't really keep you any longer, can I?
Yeah, exactly. And I particularly like it when they all like, my unicorn's tied up outside and it hasn't had water in 90 minutes, and it's Cathareth in June. Like I need to go and get some. Oh gosh, you hurry! Give that unicorn some water, or whatever it might be. It's just kind of nice, and I think if it has a connection with the learning, but it's in a fun way, it's quite a nice way of leaving it there. Another thing I'll do with older ones as well is just literally wish them a nice weekend, and
or ask them what they're doing.
Yeah. You off to the playground this weekend? or this kind of thing. And yeah, it just and then trying to remember on Monday what they said they were doing.
I see that's where the little cheat sheet comes into it again.
So the cheat sheet comes into it.
Yeah, so that's our take on all the little tiny small things we sweat over in the classroom. Let us know if anybody out there has any others that they can come up with or they use that they are particularly keen on. So thanks. Yeah, so thanks very much, Chris.
Thank you, Alan.
And we shall see you next week.
Thank you for listening to another episode of Phrasally Verbocious. If you'd like to get in touch, you can tweet us
at PhrasallyV on Twitter.
You can email us
phrasallyverbocious@gmail.com.
You can check out our show notes online at
phrasallyverbociouspodcast.blogspot.com.
And please like, review and comment us on your podcast subscription service of choice. Goodbye.
Goodbye.